Greetings. Welcome to BankBeat Conversations with Tom Bengtson. So glad you're with us. We've got Matt Middendorp with us. Matt is an ESOP enthusiast. That's ESOP as in Employee Stock Ownership Program. So we're going to talk a little bit about business ownership, bank ownership, ESOPs, but we're also going to touch on the economy in general, and we're also going to talk about sales, which Matt has an extensive background in the sales world, and I think that's got a lot of interesting dynamics to it that apply to the banking world. So Matt, thanks so much for being here. Appreciate that.
Thanks for having me, Tom. I appreciate it.
So tell me how you got involved with ESOPs. The last time we talked, you were a full-time consultant in the sales world, where you helped people develop and cultivate their sales abilities. How did you transition?
For banks specifically, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So it's a long story short is, I spent 10 years in the banking industry, working my way up to the executive level, leading sales teams, transitioned into my business, traveling all over the country, teaching bankers how to be more proactive and build more profitable relationships with their customers, which was great. I love doing that. But you know what? When you get approached by a company like ESOP Partners and you have an opportunity to have an impact, not just in the banking community, but in the broader business community through employee ownership, gosh, when those conversations took place, I couldn't not join the team. So I've been there for a short time now, but it's just really neat to see the impact that employee ownership has on businesses all over the United States.
Yeah, so just put it in a nutshell for us, for folks who don't know what an ESOP is or how it works. Provide us with kind of the 40,000-foot overview of that.
Sure, absolutely. So ESOP stands for Employee Stock Ownership Plan. It is at its heart, ESOP is three things. The first thing that ESOP is ESOP is a business transition tool, an ownership transition tool specifically. So for owners who have had a company that they've built, that they're very proud of, and let's just be honest, every owner loves to show off their company. Every owner is very proud of what they built. It's a chance for them to transition out of the business while maintaining the integrity of the name on the door, right? We all hear stories about what happens when people sell to third parties and private equity. The business changes. And it isn't always what the owner wanted for the people that work there. It's not always what the business owner wanted for the community that they're in. So this is a chance for them to maintain and have that name on the door still mean something, while obviously taking this illiquid asset that they've built in their business and make it liquid. Mm-hmm. So it's a business transition tool first. But ESOP is also an employee ownership vehicle. And here's what's really neat about that, right? Is so you're giving employees a stake in the company. Now, they don't have voting rights, they can't change the wall color, they can't change the name, they can't hire and fire people. The control still stays with the management of the current leadership of the company. But it's really neat to see that when an ESOP gets put in place, businesses are more productive, they have an easier time recruiting employees, and the employees tend to stay longer. So gosh, if you could tell me doing something that would make our company more efficient, would make it easier to hire and retain talent, especially today, with everything. We know there's a lot of challenges with hiring and retaining talent right now. That's a pretty powerful vehicle for making your business more successful. So it's a business transition tool, it's an employee ownership vehicle, but ESOP is also an IRS qualified retirement plan. So what does that mean? It means that your employees participate for free. They don't have to pay in like they do for their 401k. So they're beneficiaries of an ESOP trust, and they are then building wealth in a way that they would have never been able to do before without an ESOP. What does that mean for the company? It means that proportional to the amount of your company or bank that is employee owned, you don't pay federal or state income taxes on that percentage. So if you're 100% employee owned, you don't pay federal or state income taxes. So there are definite, because it's an IRS qualified plan, benefits to both the employee and to the business and to the company itself.
So you have just laid out a ton of information here. So let's just take.
Does this mean we're done?
No.
Oh, okay.
Let's just take a little bit of time to kind of unpack some of the points that you've made, and you made kind of three major points. But let me just ask, so if I'm a business owner and I'm beginning to think about the next chapter in my life, and I know it's time for me to phase out of ownership, there's a lot of options, and typically it would be to sell my business, find
Sure.
a buyer and sell my business. How would you say that going the ESOP route compares with that selling my business route? And you talked about that a little bit, but go a little bit more in depth.
Well, it's definitely a topic that's on everybody's mind right now in the banking community, in the business community, because 40% of the businesses in this country are still owned by the baby boomer generation. So we're talking people in their 60s and 70s. So there's a massive transfer of wealth that's happening right now. So you're right, there are a lot of different options. You can wind down your business, you can sell it to third party, you can sell it to private equity, you can sell it to an ESOP. There are pros and cons to each of those. Not every business should be an ESOP. Let's just be honest about that. So the trick is what's important to you. The good news is for most people, it's not about the money that you make from the sale. An ESOP typically makes just as much, if not more, than selling to private equity or third party, which is something that not a lot of people believe. They feel like it has to be because you're getting those tax benefits, because you're getting the benefits to the company through the employees, because you're getting that ability to transition as a business owner without having to see the community link dismantled, without having to see the thing you built taken apart or changed. That there has to be a catch, right? That there has to be a trade-off for that. And for most people, that's not the case.
Okay.
So what I would tell people who are looking, or business owners who are looking at ESOP, is to definitely talk to somebody and consider it. Talk to somebody at a place like ESOP Partners and just explore that first step, right? Hey, I think I might want to sell my business, which could mean I think I might want to look at ESOP and have that conversation.
And if I am a business owner, and I look at my staff, my employees, my colleagues, is there something about the employees that would make them better candidates for an ESOP than other employees? I mean, what should I look for in my staff, and where would I say, yeah, that would be a good fit for them, or maybe I'd say, it just isn't going to work for them? I mean, does it work that way, or what do you think?
If you have a business where the owner's looking to transition out in 1 to 3 years, obviously you want to have a succession plan in place internally. Right? You want to have the next group of leaders in place. But as far as just the general employees go, the biggest thing that you want to make sure you have is an engaged group, because you want to see that efficiency bump. You want them to want to stay longer. You want them to be more invested in what happens. And if they aren't invested now, then you're going to have to do some work after you become an ESOP to create that culture that really takes full advantage of it.
And do you find that companies that go ESOP continue to offer 401ks and other retirement benefits?
Most of the time, absolutely. Now, that may change. Sometimes the match changes, but honestly, most of the time it's an unchanged benefit. It's just another opportunity. Because remember, ESOP, unlike 401k, the employee doesn't have to contribute anything more than their time, talent, and energy to.
Yeah, and you've done the research, or you have the research that shows that people who have an ESOP do work harder, or they are more productive? I mean, how does that work?
Typically, in the first year after being an ESOP, there's a 4% bump in efficiency. And I can't think of a single business I know that wouldn't want 4% more out of what they have already.
Sure. Well, I think that makes a lot of sense. You bet.
That means you're more profitable, typically.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's really cool. And I mentioned before that you have a background helping people be more effective at sales.
Right.
And I am curious, if, as you talk to business prospects and potential customers and so forth, what are you seeing in terms of the sales culture? And is there anything about the psychology of sales that has changed, let's say, since the pandemic? Or are the fundamentals of it the same?
Do we want to talk specific to the banking industry?
Well, let's talk about banking.
Okay, so let's talk about banking. What's changed in banking, right? Obviously, we have a lot more tools that are available to us now. That bankers, I'm just going to say this, and I apologize to everybody watching, don't seem to be taking full advantage of. I know really successful bankers, ag lenders, for example, who have had meetings with farmers via Zoom while they're driving their tractors. But that's a very small percentage of bankers that are out there. The goal of the relationships we build, anybody can build a relationship. We're human. We can interact with people. We can build basic relationships in our lives with almost anybody. But in banking, in sales, we're not trying to just build relationships, we're trying to build profitable relationships. Not just profitable for us, but profitable for the bank and profitable for them as well. So we have ways to communicate now that we have never had before. This is a fantastic time to be in a business development role if you're a banker, because you have things like Zoom or Microsoft Teams where you can meet with somebody anywhere, anytime. You want to talk about efficiency? ESOP's not the only place you can be more efficient. You can be more efficient by having regular meetings with your customers over face-to-face conversations like that, right? When we're building profitable relationships, we have social media as a fantastic way to highlight and communicate with people, both prospects and customers. I know when I was in banking, a significant portion of my customers came from LinkedIn. When I had my consulting business inside the banking world, most of my customers came from conversations that I had on LinkedIn. So how are we leveraging tools that we've never had before in the industry, like social media? How are we leveraging tools that are generally very accepted right now, like Zoom or Microsoft Teams video chat? Really can be a separator and a differentiator in those profitable relationships that we're trying to build.
Okay, that's super interesting. And one thing we hear about younger employees is that their communication skills don't match the skills of earlier generations. And I don't necessarily mean to say better or worse, but I mean, they're much more comfortable.
Say it, Tom.
I mean to say they're much more comfortable with texting. Maybe they like emails, but they don't really pick up the phone, and God forbid they should actually go and meet with somebody, right? So where does that leave the sales effort, right? Is that a problem, or can we adapt to the way young people like to interact with others and still make that work in sales?
So this is an entirely different recording, but every prospect that a banker, whether they're a 25-year-old banker or a 55-year-old banker, every prospect works through the same mental process. The good news is that there's a whole bunch of ways when people make a buying decision as a business development person to help them take the steps they need to take to choose you. Right? So whether it's texting or whether it's a Zoom meeting or whether it's going and let's just be honest, there's really nothing more fun than sitting down over lunch or at a golf course or across a table from somebody and having a real conversation where you can shake hands and look them in the eye. You can't replace that, but you have to recognize that they're working through a process and you have to help them move through it. And if that means you're having a lot of shorter conversations over text where you're communicating simple ideas, that's fantastic. But I get emails all the time from people who ask very complex questions that I recognize there's ways I have to communicate to really get there. You just have to be open to different ideas. And I've found that again, the younger bankers are open to those. It's their bosses that struggle adjusting to the ways they want to communicate. They don't mind sitting down face to face, but a 30-year-old banker is also recognizing that, man, I have absolutely no problems adding one of my customers on Snapchat and having conversations there too.
Yeah, and of course, one of the challenges that bankers face and people face in all industries is attracting good young talent. And I say young, that could be anywhere from right out of college to well into one's 30s.
Well, there's a reason a lot of banks are a small percentage of ESOP now too.
Okay,
Yep.
so I was just going to ask about
okay.
that. So as we think about what younger folks are looking for and they want out of their job and out of their employment, is an ESOP, or maybe they don't know that's what it's called, but the benefits of an ESOP, is that part of what they're looking for?
Yeah, there's a reason.
Like
Like I said, a lot of banks have ESOP as a small percentage of their bank, right? It's not always easy to have a bank be 100% employee owned. So a lot of banks are 10, 15, 20% employee owned because they want to give them a stake in the success of the institution. And that is absolutely an attractor. When they start getting statements every year showing the value they're building without having to do anything other than be there and be successful, that means a lot. It really does.
Sure, okay. Hey, and so you do visit with a lot of businesses, I know, all across the upper Midwest. And so tell me what you're finding. Are business owners and managers, in your experience, optimistic about what they see going on in the economy right now? Or are they concerned and fearful about the onset of recession?
Almost universally I hear, man, I keep getting told I'm supposed to be worried, but business has never been better. I don't know what that means. My degrees are in economics and political science. I should probably have a better sense of why that is. But I think that there's a narrative that's being talked about, and I don't want to say media, right? Because it's not just media, but I think everybody's expecting it to happen. Interest rates go up. We know that that's supposed to slow things down. Inflation is an issue. We can't deny that, right? For whatever reason that's happening, we can't deny that causes pressure on people's pocketbooks, and it's supposed to slow things down. but there's just too many really good things happening, and everybody I talk to says this is great. This is a fantastic time to be in business.
Yeah, so I was going to ask you, you have, I consider it unique in the sense that you call on folks in rural areas as well as major urban areas. You're in the Twin Cities today, but sometimes you're in smaller communities, rural and ag economies. Do you see any differences there? Are things stronger maybe in rural environment than in urban, or vice versa, or is there no difference in your experience?
My apologies, I have to think about that now because I'm going to be honest, thinking about this, I'm trying to think if I've had any signals anywhere, I'm even thinking regionally, that would have given me an indication. And honestly, no. Nobody's saying that they're bullish, but nobody's complaining about the money they're making either. Now, that's very different in the banking industry right now, too, where we're not seeing the loan volume that we've seen in the past. We're not seeing, let's just be honest, banks made a living for a long time by doing a small loan that turned into a bigger loan as they consolidated debt from other places. That's not happening right now because interest rates are higher and it doesn't make sense. I'm telling you guys stuff you already know, right? So banking is very different. Banking has slowed down a little bit, but there's still a lot of really great profitability drivers, and I'm not hearing banks complain a whole lot either. I don't know if you're hearing anything different, but...
well, I mean, profitability is down, and obviously in the current rate environment, things are challenging. And there's all kinds of other issues. There's technologies, the regulatory environment.
Deposits are tough to come by right
Liquidity is a big deal, absolutely. So these are all challenges, but bankers, that's what it means to be a banker, right? Is to sort through these challenges.
I was there in 2007, 2008. This doesn't feel like that.
No, I think most people would agree with that, that is true. It's not that bad.
Sorry, I just broke out in sweats thinking about working in banking back then.
That was pretty brutal, no question. But as we're in the fourth quarter here. People are kind of doing planning for the coming calendar year, looking to 2024. We'll close with this, but just are there a couple of things that you see that all business owners, not just bankers, but all business owners really should factor into their thinking if they want to have a successful 2024?
Things they should factor into their thinking.
You mentioned for banks liquidity, that would be...
Yeah, I guess the biggest thing that I always thought about with my own business, and the things that I've always counseled my clients in the banking space when I was working in the banking space consulting sales, was focus on data.
Sure.
That's the first thing that comes to my mind when you ask that question, because the truth of it is we in the industry like to try stuff. We're very conservative, right? We don't try stuff willy-nilly, but we don't always take the time to really understand why and where we're most profitable and segment that down and build strategies based on data versus doing a lot of the same things that we've always done. Hey, we know things are slower. We know we're struggling for deposits. How did we go get deposits in the past? There's new and there's better and there's different ways, but the data shows you the direction. The data shows you, as an individual banker, this is my strength. These are the people I work with best. And if you're tracking the way they move through your process, you should be able to know exactly which people to go target as an individual lender, exactly how to go target them, and the types of conversations you should have just based on the data you collect on the interactions that you already have.
Well, that's really...
Again, a whole nother podcast.
Well, I think that's really insightful, and maybe we'll have you back for that podcast because bankers actually have access to pretty good data. I mean, much better than other industries. So yes, it would be wise to make the most of that data, right? We'd be leaving something on the table.
But as individual bankers, they don't always take advantage of the data that they have on their own performance. And they see a great global picture, but they don't understand the pieces that go into that to make them successful all the time. Therefore, they don't know when to adjust and how to adjust based on changing conditions like we're seeing right now.
Yeah. Matt, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for coming in for this brief conversation, but we've covered a lot of ground in a short amount of time, and I really appreciate you being here. This has been BankBeat Conversations with Tom Bengtson. My guest has been Matt Middendorp, and thank you very much for being with us.
Thanks for having me, Tom.
You bet.